Thank you all for joining us for our weekly Altadena Community Meeting. My ongoing mission is to cut through the bureaucracy of rebuilding and to make sure Altadena can access every resource possible. There are two topics I want to highlight for you today: local initiatives and new state legislation that will impact Altadena. I'll start with the important item that's coming before our Board of Supervisors tomorrow. We will be creating an enhanced infrastructure financing district for Altadena, known as an EIFD. These are special districts and are going to be a very important tool for rebuilding. EIFDs allow local governments to use a portion of future property tax growth to fund public infrastructure and economic recovery projects. This means your property taxes will be reinvested directly in Altadena. Creating the EIFD will enable us to fund the rebuilding of roads, sidewalks, bridges, sewer systems, storm drains, and county facilities. It will also support economic recovery, since the EIFD can also be used to fund affordable housing and workforce development in Altadena. I also want to highlight that this EIFD will create a dedicated local funding stream for long-term recovery without new taxes. This is going to be an important tool that will help the county direct and keep funding focused on supporting Altadena residents, businesses, and infrastructure during recovery. I look forward to getting this approved tomorrow so we can continue this important work. I also want to highlight some recently passed state bills that will directly impact Altadena. The first is Senator Sasha Renee Perez's SB 782, which will allow counties and cities to establish disaster recovery financing districts. This legislation is what will enable the county to move forward with the streamlined EIFD that I just mentioned. We will be able to accelerate the building of Altadena's infrastructure without having to bear long delays that come with traditional EIFD process. The bottom line is that disaster recovery financing districts allows us to fast-track steps to move forward with rebuilding more quickly. These funds must be spent within the disaster-impacted area, and our new district will focus its resources entirely on Altadena. I also want to highlight AB 468, authored by Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel, and SB 571 by Senator Bob Archuleta, both intended to crack down on crimes associated with disasters. The first helps us combat looting, and the second increases penalties for those who impersonate first responders, both ensuring we stop opportunistic crime in the aftermath of disasters. The approval of these bills sends a clear message. We will not stand by and allow wildfire survivors to be exploited. Your safety and well-being remain my priority. I will do everything in my power to ensure that as we rebuild, we uphold the safety and security of your families and homes. With strong laws, smart tools, and collaborative leaders, we will continue to make real progress to help Altadena recover as quickly, nimbly, and safely as possible. Before I wrap up, I also want to remind you that our county's Department of Mental Health is available for in-person support at Loma Alta Park. The weight of recovery and rebuilding is emotionally and mentally heavy. You don't have to bear that weight alone. The county offers resources to help you navigate through it and keep going. Join DMH for free classes every week on Tuesdays at 5 p.m., Thursdays at 12 p.m., and Saturdays at 12 p.m. now through the end of November. These classes will feature mindfulness exercises, informational instruction, and candid discussion. You can also get support around the clock by calling the helpline at 1-800-854-7771 or calling or texting 988. I hope you'll take advantage of these valuable resources, or if you know someone who needs help, please share this information with them. With that, let's get the rest of our meeting underway.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to provide a permit progress update. My name is Kira Barnett, and I'm Assistant Deputy Director at LA County Public Works, overseeing our newly formed Recovery Division. As we all experienced last week with the sudden rainfall, storm season is officially underway and will continue through April. Despite our warm, dry climate, flooding is one of the most serious natural hazards we face in LA County, and it can happen quickly with devastating consequences. We're especially vulnerable to intense flooding, particularly in desert areas and after wildfires or intense storms. The January wildfires further exacerbated our risks of flooding because soil affected by the fire cannot absorb water effectively, leading to sudden debris flows, mud flows, and landslides. If we could go to the next slide, please. To be prepared for storms, make sure that you have a flood safety plan in place in case of an emergency. Visit waterforla.com to find your flood risk and increase your awareness of flood hazard areas, understanding that flooding can happen anywhere. LA County Public Works offers free engineering advice to help property owners manage potential mud and debris flows on their properties. It's a crucial step in protecting your neighbors and community by keeping these flows from entering the storm drain system. Just call 1-800-675-HELP to make an appointment. Visit ready.lacounty.gov to sign up for alerts through Alert LA County, Nixle, and NOAA Weather Radio to stay notified of an emergency. You can find these resources and more at ready.lacounty.gov. Have an evacuation plan in place, especially for children and mobility impaired family members. Be aware of other dangers during a flood, such as downed power lines, as well as appropriate evacuation procedures. Now to provide a permit progress update. The LA County Recovers website has an interactive data dashboard specifically for showing our permit progress updates and latest figures. Visit recovery.lacounty.gov/permitting-progress-dashboard. 2,061 rebuild applications have been received by Los Angeles County as of last Friday. This number includes all permit types, including new single-family residences, accessory dwelling units, garages, accessory structures, multifamily applications, and non-residential properties. Planning has cleared 1,632 zoning reviews. 1,098 properties have submitted full building plans and advanced into the building review stage. Separate permits are created for each structure, and we have a total of 1,590 structures in various stages of building plan review or with permits issued. Including all permit types, 388 parcels have active permits for a total of 546 structures, including 417 new residential units. We've been averaging 81 days from initial submittal to permit issuance for new residential projects, which includes the time it takes to prepare and submit the full design package, as well as respond to comments received, obtain necessary clearances, and to pull the permits. 206 additional new residential submittals have plans approved, pending clearances or pulling of the permits. We have made and will continue to implement website revisions to clarify information and make it easier to navigate. And if we could go to the next slide, please. There is a gap between the number of zoning clearances issued and the number of plan check applications submitted for building plan review, mostly due to designers still preparing the full building plans for submittal, incorrect or incomplete submittal information, delays in applicant review and response time. And we've outlined the most common errors and omissions that we see for all permitting departments on our applications and how to effectively address them so that you can get your permit as quickly as possible. The full common errors and omissions sheet that you see here is published on our website. To stay informed on project progress, it is essential that property owners create an Epic LA account so that you can be connected to your permit case. This will allow you to see all activity, documentation, and responses to track your project's progress. See Apply for Permits on recovery.lacounty.gov to sign up for an account and be connected to your permit. As always, if you have any questions or would like to speak with an LA County representative in person about your plans or permit application, please visit our Altadena One-Stop Permit Center located at 464 West Woodbury Road in Altadena. As shared last week, LA County has released a survey to obtain your feedback on opportunities to expand the noise ordinance to accelerate construction. Public Health is seeking feedback from you to determine if you would support extending work hours within the fire burn area with clear noise level standards to minimize impacts and ensure a predictable work schedule. Some considerations are to allow for construction 7 days per week and on limited holidays, and extending hours within the workday to allow for limited noise to occur earlier in the morning or later in the evening. We've developed a quick survey to gauge community feedback that reflects lived experiences and gathers input on how any potential changes to construction hours may affect the community. The link to the survey is on our website, and this QR code shown on screen will link to the survey so that we can continue to provide the survey and get responses from our rebuilding communities. And if we could go to the next slide, please. We'll be hosting a workshop on October 25th on addressing the funding gaps for rebuild projects. This virtual workshop will review the costs for each phase of a typical project, identify possible funding sources, and explain how to evaluate options to cover any gaps. And for the next slide, please. And finally, on November 12th, we'll be hosting another Rebuilding Together workshop on self-certification and rebuilding with a self-certified design professional. This workshop will cover self-certification requirements, discuss examples of projects that qualify, and talk about the benefits of self-certification. You'll also have the opportunity to speak directly with LA County officials and ask questions. And this concludes my updates for today, and I thank you for your time.
I'm Brad Pensack, Senior Manager with Southern California Edison, dedicated to supporting the restoration and rebuild efforts for our impacted communities and customers. SCE is here to support you as you rebuild. We understand that you may have many questions and may not be sure how to get started. We want to make it easier by walking you through the steps and resources available to help you restore electric service. We have a guide online that outlines these following steps, as well as the support to help you navigate the rebuilding process at sce.com/disaster recovery. Step 1, apply for temporary electric service. To get started with rebuilding, you may need temporary electric service to power tools, lighting, or other construction equipment before permanent service is installed. Just give our customer support team a call at 1-800-250-7339 and we'll help you begin the process. This dedicated phone line supports customers with rebuilding. Here's what you'll need. First, get the required permits from your city or county building department. They may have additional conditions for this permit. Then, fill out a temporary power application at sce.com/temporary service. Work with your contractor to install your temporary electrical service. You can find technical requirements at sce.com/ESR. Schedule an inspection of your electrical panel with your local building department. Once we receive the inspection release, we'll install your meter in service, typically within 5 to 7 business days in most areas. Your SCE contact will reach out to discuss your project and guide you through the process. Review your application to make sure everything is complete, and visit your site to inspect the temporary installation. Step 2, rebuild and prepare for permanent electric service. Once your building plans are approved by your local jurisdiction, you'll need to submit an application for permanent service. Here's what you'll need to prepare. Fill out a customer project information sheet at sce.com/customer info sheet. Complete a design option letter at sce.com/design option. Have your site plans ready, including a CAD file, 2018 version or earlier, a panel single line diagram, load calculations, and your grant deed. Step 3, apply for permanent electric service. Permanent service requires a separate application from the temporary one. Call 1-800-250-7339 to get started. Once we receive your request, an SCE planner will contact you to go over the project details and timeline. To help things go smoothly, we recommend submitting your permanent service application as soon as your building plans are approved. Applying early can help ensure your permanent service is ready when your rebuild is complete. Need more help? We offer additional support, including helpful programs and rebates. Visit sce.com/disaster recovery to learn more. We are here to help you every step of the way. If you have questions or need guidance, don't hesitate to reach out. Your safety and recovery are our priority.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anish Saraya, Director of Altadena Recovery for Supervisor Kathryn Barger. As Supervisor Barger mentioned earlier here today, there's obviously a lot of legislation that has made its way through the state legislature that has impacts on our community, especially as it rebuilds. Given all of the challenges we face on a day-to-day basis to keep up with all of that legislation, the supervisor asked me to step in and provide a little bit more context on two bills in particular that I think have been top of mind and have been topics of discussion in the community related to recovery and rebuilding. The first of those is Senate Bill 629. This was a bill that would have otherwise required the state of California to update all of the community of Altadena into the very high fire hazard severity zones under CAL FIRE's high fire hazard severity zone maps. Generally speaking, the majority of Altadena, as we sit currently, is not within the very high fire hazard severity zones. And moving forward, I'm just going to say very high because that's a mouthful. So today, most of Altadena is not in that very high zone. What happens when you are in the very high zone is that there are certain requirements under state law, including brush clearance, vegetation management, and the use of certain building construction methods and materials if you are doing new builds. Now, normally in most high fire zones, there isn't a lot of activity of new building going on. Obviously, in the case of Altadena, there's an incredible amount of rebuilding that's taking place today. And had this bill passed, it would have required every single Eaton fire survivor to rebuild with all of these new requirements in mind. Some of those requirements include provisions of Zone 0, which are not currently established by the Department of Forestry from the state of California, Chapter 7 and Chapter 7A of the California Building Code, as well as the defensible space requirements for those properties to maintain brush clearance around all of the structures on your property. So as some of you may know, Governor Newsom did veto Senate Bill 629. I think there were concerns about its implementation pathway and ultimately what it would mean for a community that is trying to rebuild at least 6,000 homes and so many other vital and important structures. However, all of the methods we described included in the very high fire hazard severity zones, including Zone 0, including Chapter 7A of the Building Code, all of these are still well-intended ideas to help in the rebuilding of homes and also to make sure that your properties are defensible from future disasters, but also insurable. I think as we are learning more and more about how communities recover from wildfires, one of the biggest challenges is always going to be making sure our communities have the ability to get insurance for their rebuilt homes. So the supervisor really does have a focus on ensuring that as you rebuild your home, as you are going through this process, you have the best education and information related to how to build back more resiliently and to build back better. So over the next few weeks, the supervisor is going to be working with industry experts in our county departments to make sure that as you start your rebuild process, you understand all of the options available to you, the cost implications of pursuing the different methods of rebuilding, as well as understanding what that will look like for you in terms of both cost, time, and design. So as you start your rebuilding process, and if you have questions about the best way to rebuild your homes, county departments are available to help provide you with the guidance of the different methods for rebuilding. Each one of our departments has experts available at our Altadena One-Stop Permitting Center, which anybody can sign up to have a one-on-one consultation or just drop in to try to meet with representatives from each of our county's permitting departments so that you can help get your questions answered, but more importantly, plan out your rebuilding effort. So the other piece of legislation that's really impactful for the Altadena community is Senate Bill 782. This was authored by State Senator Sasha Renee Perez, obviously who represents the Altadena community. This bill essentially helps us streamline existing state processes and expands our ability to be able to bring tax increment financing districts to help rebuild our community. So tax increment financing districts are a very complicated way of saying we need a mechanism to reinvest in our community, to accelerate its recovery, and that this mechanism in and of itself is designed to take that upfront investment and repay that back. So what that means in practical terms is that prior to the fire, the Altadena community had a certain tax basis. So that's the property tax that's generated that would otherwise go to the county. Obviously, after the fire, thousands and thousands of people have submitted disaster and calamity claims, which have reduced their property tax basis, which has overall depressed the property tax basis in the entire community. The hope here is that we want to utilize that future tax increment growth, which is what we know we will have when our community is rebuilt and recovers, and to utilize that as a funding mechanism to help us invest in the core infrastructure of this community that will allow each and every one of our Eaton fire survivors to rebuild their homes, their lives, their jobs, their businesses. And so what that allows us to do is create a tax increment financing district, which has a certain capacity to help us accelerate the upfront funding we are going to need to rebuild more than $1 billion worth of damage to public and civic infrastructure. So one of the key provisions of Senate Bill 782 is that it only requires one public hearing of the local jurisdiction. Normally, the process to set up an EIFD can take up to 12 months. In this case, our ability to move quickly is going to allow us to create the greatest amount of capacity to ensure that we can get the critical funding we need to rebuild all of our infrastructure. Under traditional state EIFD law, there is a very lengthy process to establish an EIFD. At this moment where we sit today, this potential tax increment financing district, this EIFD, for the community of Altadena, and only for the community of Altadena, has a certain capacity that will allow us to get critical funds over the next few years to rebuild infrastructure. If we were to wait and go through that older process, there's a chance we would start to lose the capacity of this district and reduce the amount of funds that would be available. So as we sit today, the cumulative impact to the community and the cumulative cost of rebuilding all of our critical infrastructure far exceeds the capacity of this district. Preserving that capacity, every ounce of that capacity, is going to be incredibly important to make sure that we have the funding available to be able to help restore critical government services and government maintained infrastructure that support every one of the members of our community. So what does an EIFD cover? A traditional EIFD covers basic infrastructure, some affordable housing, and other components that are part of a growth strategy that'll help a community develop. EIFDs are traditionally used in blighted communities or in communities that have not seen significant development. It's almost like an accelerant to try to help bring in additional private development to help create a booming economy in a local community. In this instance, what we are trying to do is obviously make sure that as you are rebuilding your lives and homes and businesses, that all of the supportive infrastructure you need is established and ready and waiting and supporting your rebuilt homes and lives. So Senate Bill 782 allows us to take that traditional EIFD model and expand it. It allows us to pursue other avenues of support for our community. There, along with critical infrastructure, which I mentioned, we have over $1 billion worth of damage to. It also allows us to help fund affordable housing opportunities, potentially low interest loans and grants, and other mechanisms that otherwise traditional EIFDs do not allow. So as we sit today, as the supervisor mentioned earlier, the county is moving forward with the implementation of an EIFD for the Altadena community. That will be on the board's agenda at tomorrow's meeting. And moving forward, for the EIFD itself, there will be an infrastructure financing plan released for public review and comment. That plan will be released in early November and ultimately will be available for public comment. Ahead of the release of that report, the county will be leading combined outreach through the Departments of Public Works and Regional Planning to gather feedback on important priorities for our community for that infrastructure financing plan. We have a catalog of the damage that has been done to public and civic infrastructure. That's inclusive of our parks, Eaton Canyon Nature Center, the Senior Center, but also our roads, bridges, sewer systems, and all of the different pieces of infrastructure that we, the county, currently maintain. But there are potential opportunities to expand and help rebuild modernized infrastructure that will support our community. So one of the opportunities within the EIFD is to be able to go beyond just traditional infrastructure repair and replacement. There are about 700 properties in Altadena that are currently on septic systems. One of the potential available funding priorities for this EIFD will be to help transition them from septic systems onto mainline trunk sewers and sewer infrastructure. This will allow us to have a much more sustainable and resilient community, removing older septic systems and allowing people to access traditional modern mainline sewer systems. Another potential opportunity for the EIFD to fund is to help offset the cost of connections for future Edison underground facilities. This is potentially a key priority for homes that are not currently in the rebuilding process. Standing homes who may have their Edison infrastructure go underground will need to make that connection to continue to receive power. So that is a cost that many did not foresee. And that is one of the priorities that is going to be established in the infrastructure financing plan to help provide a potential funding stream to help offset that cost for individual homeowners. Now, as you can imagine, and I started this off by saying there is more money that is required than is provided in the capacity of this district. But the point of this district is to make sure that we have strong local sources of revenue to be able to support our community. We are still pursuing every avenue for grants through the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program and through other available grant programs issued by both the state and the federal governments. And so while some of these potential priorities can be funded through other avenues and mechanisms, we want to create the broadest boundary capture to ensure that should those other grants and funding sources not materialize, we have this other local mechanism and avenue to be able to help support our community in its recovery process. We're obviously still hopeful that Governor Newsom's request to the federal government for disaster relief will come through, and that's going to be another significant funding mechanism to help our communities rebuild and recover. But until that time, we want to make sure that the county is doing everything we can, and the supervisor is leaning in hard to make sure that we bring local revenues and resources to the table while we wait for all of those other funding sources to materialize. And with that, I think that's the summary we have today about these two bills. I know we've had a lot of questions. If you do have any questions still remaining, please email us at Altadena Recovery at bos.lacounty.gov. That's Altadena Recovery at bos.lacounty.gov.